What's up, friends? I'm U.S. Army veteran ThatChrisChaos, and let's talk Army. So if you're not familiar, this is my sort of news channel, but I don't dive too deep into the stories. I'm just trying to give you kind of a general understanding of some stuff that's happening maybe in or around the Army. And then if you want to know a lot more about the story, then I link down below to the full article so you can dive deeper into this story. But the first one we're going to start off with is probably the one that a lot of people are curious about, which is the new physical fitness test for the Army being approved. So the Army has approved the new physical fitness test, or it's actually called the ACFT. I think before it was the ACRT, the Army Combat Readiness Test. I did do a video on it that explained a little bit about it. There wasn't a lot of details back then that was known about it. It was still in testing, and now it's official. Now, starting October of 2020 is when this PT test is going to roll out. Now, the official grading criteria hasn't really come out just yet. But when it does, maybe I'll have some information on it. So I'm a little curious as to how it's going to work. But the main important thing that I like is that it's gender neutral and also it doesn't matter based on your age. So with the previous, one, you had to, it was based on your age, it was based on if you're male or female. Now this one doesn't matter. It is going to have a little bit of specific things that are based on your MOS in the Army, but otherwise it's going to be, basically the same standards for men and women of the same MOS at least. I do think there will be some issues. Right now, the only thing you really need to bring to a PT test is going to be like a stopwatch, a grading sheet, maybe a PT mat, but sometimes you don't even necessarily need that if you have some grassy area or something for the sit-up event. So it's fairly easy to administer a PT test. While I like this new PT test, and I do think it, probably tests a soldier a lot better than the current one, I do think it is going to be a little bit of a challenge for units to be able to do this because you're going to have to do a lot of coordination ahead of time to get the equipment. I don't know how they're going to work it, if they're going to make it to where each division, each brigade, each battalion, I don't know, gets their own set of equipment, and then that unit that wants to do, or that platoon or whatever wants to do a PT test, they just check it out and then you have to kind of schedule it. I don't know. It does seem like it adds a lot more logistics to it. Plus you have to get the equipment to the PT site, so it does make it a lot more of a challenge to administer a PT test, I feel like. But I do feel like it does give a much better kind of result as to trying to test a soldier's abilities and make sure that they're in good enough shape for combat. Now, some people ask, should I get ready for the old PT test, the current one that the Army is doing, or this new one? And I think maybe it's a good idea just to get ready for both. Now, like I said, it's not going to be implemented Army-wide until October of 2020, but they are going to slowly start transitioning towards it. So that means some units will start doing it sooner than other units will. And just the objective is that all units in the Army are doing this new PT test by October of 2020. So that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have to do this new PT test until October of 2020. You could be doing it sooner. How soon just really depends, I guess, in which unit kind of has to start doing it first or whatever, how it kind of ends up playing out that way. So you may be one of the last units to start using this new PT test, or you could be one of the first units to start doing the PT test. Who knows? If you want to see that full video that explains really well from the United States Army of how that PT test looks and how the events work and everything, the link is down in the description, as well as an article from the U.S. Army that talks a little bit more about the standards and other things that go along with this new PT test. Next, let's talk about how the Army is going to be extending OSUT training. If you're not familiar with what OSUT training is, it's one station unit training, and that is the training that like 11 Bravos go through. Now, I believe that there are other MOSs that do OSUT, but I'm not going to dive into that. I just want to tell you that OSUT in general is going to be extended. So currently OSUT is 14 weeks. It's going to be extended to 21 weeks, and starting this month in July is when they're actually going to start implementing it and kind of working towards that new standard of the 21 weeks OSUT. Now, the reason that they're doing this, that they're extending the length of OSUT, is because they want to add more training to the soldiers. A lot of times a soldier goes from, OSUT to their very first unit, and they're not on par with a lot of the other soldiers, and then they have to send them to additional training. So the idea is that if they just extend some of the training in OSUT, then hopefully it'll make a soldier a little bit more ready when they actually show up to their first unit. Because some of the things they're going to be adding to it is they're going to be doing the combatives, they're doing combat lifesaver, which is really good because a lot of times, brand new privates show up to their first unit, and that's one of the first things a lot of times they'll do is send them to combat lifesaver class. And they'll already come, having that knowledge of how to do the combat lifesaver course and how to do that basic first aid stuff. They're also going to add some more of the day and night land navigation, as well as some different weapons qualifications. So get them a little bit more familiar with different weapons that you're probably going to be utilizing in an infantry unit. So if you're someone who's thinking about joining the Army to be, say, an 11 Bravo, there's a good chance that this is going to apply to you, as it's no longer going to be a 14-week OSUT. It is going to be this new, probably 21-week OSUT. But if you would like more details, check out the link down in the description. Next, let's talk about how this Army policy that they actually kind of brought into the Army back in February, but I'm talking about it now, is that they're going to make soldiers that are not deployable for more than 12 months either get better or get kicked out of the Army, I guess. And now I think this is very good. I've seen some experience before being in the Army that, you'd see these soldiers that were on profile for such a long time, never deployed anywheres, and not deployable because of their injuries of whatever it was that happened. And they're just there doing training and doing, basic stuff around the post, but not actually doing their job when it comes down to it during a deployment. Now, of course, there will be exceptions, and this article actually talks about that as well. But essentially, is what it's going to come down to is that if a soldier is non-deployable for 12 months, then they're going to be reviewed by a medical board to determine if they need to be kicked out of the Army or given more time. Because there is going to be some exceptions to that. For example, if you're not deployable because of an injury received in combat or maybe certain other circumstances, then it may not apply to you. You may have a little bit more time, or you may be exempt from this policy. But if you're just some soldier that maybe got hurt during a run on PT, or you were goofing around off post, in your free time and got injured, and now you can't, do a certain tasks that, make you deployable, then you could possibly be facing, getting kicked out of the Army. Also, exceptions to that is going to be pregnancy and other things. It'll be, some different exceptions. I'm not going to go run through the different lists of exceptions, but essentially, if it's not a good reason as to why you are not deployable, then soldiers could be possibly facing getting kicked out of the Army for it. But again, it goes back to they're going to have to be non-deployable for up to 12 months. If they're non-deployable for a few months, 6 months, something like that, and then get better and then they are deployable, that's probably fine. But if they go past 12 months of being non-deployable because of whatever reason, then they're possibly going to be reviewed by the medical board, and they're going to make a decision as to whether or not the soldier needs to be kicked out of the Army or not. And the last story here is actually Air Force news, but it does affect the Army in kind of some ways. And that is that the Air Force announced couple months back maybe, that they're going to be switching to the OCP pattern for their uniforms. And the OCP pattern is the same pattern that is being used by the U.S. Army, the Operational Camouflage Pattern. So the Air Force is going to start rolling this out on the 1st of October of this year. So that means you're going to start seeing Air Force personnel look very, very, very similar to U.S. Army personnel. Now, even if you look at the uniform, here's an example of the Air Force One. A couple things that are very different, obviously, is going to be the rank, because Air Force rank is different from Army rank, but also the name tape is a little bit kind of more faded. When you kind of compare that to an Army one, you can kind of see here, of course, obviously you have Army rank, and then the U.S. Army name tape is different than kind of the way that the Air Force one kind of looks to me. So here, it doesn't seem like the Air Force name tape stands out quite the same as like how the Army name tape kind of stands out. So that will be a little bit different, but essentially the pattern is the exact same pattern. It's the OCP pattern, so it is the same pattern. So you could very easily see, if you see Air Force people walk around, Army people, they may look very similar, almost exactly the same. It'll be a little bit different, kind of seeing these two uniforms that look exactly the same, but they're two different branches of the military. So the only ones that are going to stand out now is going to be Navy and Marines, but are they eventually going to switch to the OCP pattern? And then all of the United States military looks exactly the same? I don't know. What are your thoughts? Leave some comments down below. But if you want to check out the full article about the Air Force switching to the OCP pattern, I'll leave a link down in the description. So there you go. That's some news, either recent and some a little bit older, but gets you a little bit filled in on some of the current events that are happening in the United States Army and around the Army. And if you want to know more of the details and a lot more specifics, I'll leave links, as I said, down in the description down below. You can check out the full articles and dive deeper into it if you have one that you're interested in. But maybe that fills your curiosity and that's all you need to know. If so, that's fine too. Now, if you enjoyed the video and you liked the Army news stuff, make sure to hit that like button. If you want to talk about some more of the stories, maybe give some opinions about different articles that I talked about in there, make sure to hit up those comment section. Now, if you want to check out some of my other videos, I got these guys right over there that are highly recommended. As well as if you're not already subscribed to this channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Check out more Army and military style content. I'm ChristopherChaos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. See ya.